Hello everyone, my name is Miranda Barajas. I am the current president for the SLC for this upcoming fall semester, and today is our first SLC podcast. And we have our first guest, who happens to be our former SLC president and CSUF alumni. We have with us Rachel Griffin. Rachel's participated in pretty much everything the SLC has to offer. She is truly a rock star in everything that she pursues and happens to always practically take the gold for most of our sales competitions. And Rachel, we just want to thank you for being with us today. And yeah.
Hi guys, thank you so much for having me, Miranda.
So we thought it'd be a really great idea to kind of like warm ourselves up with some rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, here we go. So our first one is, are you a morning person or a night person?
Morning person for sure.
What is your favorite hobby?
My favorite hobby, probably going out on walks with my dogs.
I know you always like to show your dogs on your
Yeah.
Instagram. They're so cute. What is one thing that annoys you the most?
Oh my gosh. I would say at least from an academic perspective, people that show a lot of potential, but they don't ever do anything about it. So that It's so frustrating to see somebody that has so much potential and they have so much that they can give, but they just they don't put in the energy to do it.
Right. All talk and no action.
Yes.
Definitely. I'm with you on that one. What is the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
Oh, so I recently ate octopus, but it was like sliced octopus. So it was kind of like cold cuts, but with the octopus tentacle. So yeah, because I've had I've eaten a lot of weird things, I guess, like alligator and a bunch of other stuff. But that was the most recent one.
Okay, interesting. I don't know about that alligator one. Oh my gosh.
It's like chicken.
For sure. Okay, what is your favorite thing about someone in your family?
I think my favorite thing about them, just my family as a whole, like my immediate family, is that I'm a really quirky person, and so they completely accept it, and they can just, we just bounce off of each other with that energy, and I really love how supportive they've been with all of my different endeavors that I like to pursue.
And speaking about quirks, you got the next one. What is one weird quirk that you have?
Oh, so when I eat M&Ms, I like to eat them in pairs, and they have to be the same color, which is kind of OCD, I guess. And if it comes to the end of the bag and there's like one left, I'll still eat it because I don't waste my chocolate. But I guess that's a weird quirk, right?
That's kind of like the Kourtney Kardashian, where they eat a Kit Kat a certain way.
Oh, really? Okay, I'm not, I don't do that, but yeah, I'm weird in a lot of ways. So that's one of them.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
I would say sassy, outgoing, and determined.
For sure, yeah. I would definitely have picked those. Those are spot on. If you could trade lives with anyone for a day, who would it be and why?
These are hard questions. Just so everybody knows, I was not prepared with answering them, so they really are rapid fire. Who would I be for a day? I probably would want to be... Okay, honestly, I would probably want to be right now Selena Gomez, because she's probably like my celebrity icon right now, and I'm just seeing...
She's everywhere right now.
She's everywhere, and so I'm just seeing all of the different things that she's doing, and I'm really curious what her day-to-day life is, because she's involved in cosmetics, obviously acting, singing, and a bunch of other nonprofits. So I'm really curious to see what her day-to-day life is and how she's able to maintain all of those different things.
Yeah, that's a good one. She's amazing. I love her.
Yeah.
All right, moving right along. So I know that you have graduated recently, just last semester, so congratulations on that. From all of us at the SLC, we are so proud of you and what you have accomplished with everything. And speaking about accomplishments, you were able to gain full-time employment right after graduation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we would love to know, what have you been up to and where are you currently working?
Yeah, okay. So during this pandemic, where I've moved from working in person to remote. So right now I currently work remote, and my job is called a practice success manager, and it's for a healthcare technology startup company. So to explain a little bit about what that role entails, it is sales. So I'm basically right now the only salesperson in the company. I cover a national territory, and I speak with doctors and technicians every day. It's in the ophthalmology field, and I'm basically helping them to understand the different services that we offer and how we can make their practice and their patients have a great experience. So I've been doing that full time. Working at a startup is crazy. There's a lot to do, and you wear a lot of different hats. So sales is my primary job, but I am like IT, I'm like customer support, I'm so many other things too. So
I was just gonna ask you, what are your day-to-day like responsibilities?
So day to day, there does entail a lot of follow-up, just making sure that if there's any specific accounts that I need to reach out to, that I'm continuing that conversation with them. I might lead onboarding or training calls with some practices. But when I say practices, it's a doctor's practice, like you go into for your eye doctor.
Right.
So I'll lead training calls with their staff to educate them on what Legrand is. I get phone calls a lot too, just from all the different either practices, their employees, or within the company, or other contacts that I have. So it's just kind of fielding the phone calls and seeing what is happening today. But consistent is making sure that I'm doing follow-up and outreach, and then maintaining a relationship with the various accounts that I handle.
All right. Wow, you seems like you're a busy bee.
Yes. As we all are.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
So, getting to right into it, we want to ask you about your experience last year in competing in the 2019 Great Northwoods Sales Warm-Up. And for those who aren't familiar, the Great Northwoods Sales Warm-Up is a competition hosted by the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. Each year, the CSUF Sales Leadership Center is invited to participate along with the several other universities across the country. And last year, Rachel and 2 other CSUF students traveled to Wisconsin with the SLC director, Brad Anderson, to represent CSUF in the competition. So this year, the competition is going to be held virtually. So if you are interested in competing, visit the SLC website for application submission requirements. And the deadline to apply is Friday, September 18th by 5 p.m. And going into the meat and potatoes, as you would always say, how did you typically prepare for a sales competition, Rachel?
So when I was preparing for sales competitions, the first thing that I would do is just really start to read through all of the materials. Because if you don't have an understanding of that, then you're probably not going to get very far. So after reading through those materials, I would then go back and start highlighting some of the key things that I needed to know. And then I would start putting together an outline. So I had this general outline that I've put together based off of the SLC trainings that I went to, because when I started with the SLC, I hadn't taken any sales classes, I hadn't taken any marketing classes, so it was really just what I was taught in the SLC workshops. So I started putting together an outline, and I would take the information that I have from the materials that are given for the competition and then find where they should be in that outline. So I would start with my introduction, like, hi, my name's Rachel with whatever company that the competition is having you do. And then you would go into your needs identification questions, and kind of based off of what the outline is in the materials that they hand you, what type of questions would be relevant for this product or service you're trying to sell. And then you just kind of go from there. So I would really just take it step by step, because there's a lot of information to go through. And then once you feel like you're comfortable with that outline, I would then start creating additional materials like visuals. So if it was like a pie chart, or if it was an actual picture or something that I felt would enhance the competition and the pitch that I was giving, then I would start creating those materials. I can say that sometimes I would create a ton and only use like 2 or 3 in the competition itself.
Yeah.
But I felt so much better having all of that with me, because you never know where the conversation is going to go. So that was how I would initially plan for it. And there's a lot of practice that goes behind it.
Always be prepared.
Yes.
I love that. Going on to our next question, what were some of the emotions that were like running through your head, and like even during the competition? So when preparing and actually competing and after?
That's a good question. So I would get asked that question a lot after I'd done a good amount of competitions, and they're like, Rachel, you seem so calm going into it. Yeah. And I'm like, if only you guys saw behind the curtain. So let me explain. The initial emotions when I first get the materials is just like, wow, okay, this is a lot. And that's probably how most people are going to feel. They're just going to look at it just at everything they have and feel a little bit overwhelmed. So that's why when I was mentioning before, breaking things down piece by piece is super important. And so that kind of helped ease my nerves that way. And once I prepared more, my nerves started to lessen a lot. So beforehand, it's just kind of like, it starts with maybe a little bit overwhelmed, and then it's like a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more confident as you start preparing more and more. Then going into the competition, beforehand, I would say nervous, as anybody is, but also excited.
You still get those little butterflies?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think when I get the butterflies is like right when you're waiting at the door. So when I did it last year, you would wait at the door, and then they would count you down. They'd say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you knock on the door and walk in. Yeah. So there's like this buildup really, because it's like you can see other people that you're going against, and then it's like, all right, go. So that's when I would really start to get those nerves. Beforehand, I would just I try to like just make it about the experience and be super excited about the whole thing. And, it's where you get to work with your teammates and other people as well in the preparation part. So to just kind of use it as that learning experience. But of course, I get nervous. When I'm in there doing the competition itself, the nerves are still there, but because I've prepared so much, I'm able to rely on the work that I've done. I still get my mouth gets kind of dry when I go in there. I don't think people notice. It's really not something people notice, but I'm like, oh my God, Rachel, drink some water or something. But it's both nervous when I'm in it, and then excitement and relief when you're done. So it's such a relief when you finish, because you're like, okay, I did everything I could to prepare. I'm in it, and I did the best I could. And so now I'm just glad almost that it's over, but also excited to see, if you make it to the next round or something like that. So there's a whole bunch of them that goes through my head of emotions, but it's all good experience. And after the entire competition, I'm always super glad that I did it. And you usually make a ton of friends. And even if it's virtual, you can still reach out and make a bunch of friends that way too.
Thank you. Because I always had wondered, I was like, does Rachel ever get nervous? Or no.
People would ask me
always have this calm, demeanor, and your face is okay. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but I'm just
But that's the thing is and I think that's one of the reasons why I was able to do that, is just because, like I said, I've prepared, and practicing is a huge thing. I know this is part of that previous question, but when I would prepare for a competition, I would always practice with somebody. Even if it's you feel like you didn't have really much time, try to take a small bit of your time to at least go through it once, because it's like an essay, for instance. When you submit an essay to your professor, you probably wrote it and then at least proofread it to see if there's any mistakes in there, and then you submit it. So you're never going to submit the first draft. And when you go into a sales competition, that's the same exact thing. you don't want to give your pitch for the first time ever in the actual competition. So I would prepare with my friends, with my teammates, with like Brad or Kayla, for instance, whoever it was that I could steal to prepare with, I would. So that way when going in, I could have that like more calm demeanor, even if on the inside I was still freaking out, but I could feel a little bit more calm and composed because I knew what I was going to say and I felt more prepared. And a little tip too, for anybody that's interested in competing, you don't have to have it all memorized. You can have paperwork with you. You can glance at your notes, and I always did that. It's good to even take notes during the sales call because it's not a memorization game. It's a sales pitch. So you have to be able to kind of relay the information, and nobody's going to have it memorized completely for their first time going.
What were some of the benefits of competing in this specific competition?
So for Great Northwoods specifically, one of the biggest benefits is the exposure that you get. What I really like about the Sales Leadership Center at Cal State Fullerton is that you get a ton of different networking opportunities with a bunch of different companies and different industries and everything like that. But when you go to these sales competitions, you get even more exposure. So if there's a corporate sponsor that we have at CSUF SLC, but we don't have a couple of the other ones, we go to this sales competition and there's a ton of other ones. At this one specifically, Great Northwoods, I believe, the first time that I went, so I went twice. I went in 2018 and 2019. The first time that I went in 2018, I got to interview with Hormel, which is a really huge food company. And I got to interview with them on the spot. And then it was super cool. And there's a ton of other companies that do that too. So I'm assuming that during this virtual one, it's going to be the same, where they have breakout sessions where you're able to still network with the different companies, and you'll be able to basically put yourself out there and show your name to people, so that way you get these opportunities for internships or full-time employment. And at least if you're not looking, or if you want to do more networking just for the sake of it, you can get those connections so that later on you can go back for them. I've gotten internships from companies that I've met at other competitions, and I wasn't looking for an internship at the time, but once my other one had finished, I reached out to them and they still remembered me because of the impression that you make. So that's one of the biggest things from the competition, is just to get that exposure. Other parts that I really enjoy is just being able to see and interact with people your age and your peer group from different colleges from all across the U.S., because you're able to kind of see how they prepare, or even just make friends with people from across the U.S. I have friends from different states now, which is so cool, because I feel like sometimes you forget about what else is out there. You start to silo yourself. So being able to get yourself out into national competitions, if possible, it's a really great opportunity, and I highly recommend it if you can.
Awesome. Thank you. How did you make, again, connections with other people in the competition, from students to recruiters and companies? But I think you kind of went over that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I just touch base on the process of actually going through it. So, there's going to be a career fair or like a career expo type setup where you're able to go and literally just go from like table to table, or if it's virtually, it's probably going to be like from meeting room to meeting room, and introduce yourself. It's good to have resumes with you if you're going from like a career fair perspective, because it's a company you're interested in, then at least you can put your resume in their hand or in front of their face. That way you're going to stand out, as opposed to going through like Indeed and then having like a stack of resumes that they probably won't shift through all of them. So when it comes to the professionals that you're going to, you just have to know what you're going to say, in the sense that you're going to introduce yourself. You're going to probably say something about their company, what interests you about their company. And it's okay to ask them questions too, because that's what the networking process is about. And from there, it becomes a more relaxed conversation, because it is more conversative as opposed to an actual interview. Like, this is just to get information from each other in a more relaxed type of situation. When it comes to my peers from different schools and different states and everything, that one's, I mean, it's just the same as like how you would make friends anywhere else, right? You just go up to people, talk about something in common. Well, guess what? You guys are all at the competition, so like that's a good icebreaker. And so I would just go up to people, ask them questions, and then it's just like a more casual conversation from there, and you exchange contact information, and then it's helpful because they might have other people that they want to introduce you to and everything. So when I went, I just sat at the table with other people for dinner or something like that, and then you just start talking that way. When I went last year, we got like a group of people from a couple different schools, and we went to like a local haunted house together. So like people are so chill. It's great. And never be afraid. Like, if you're a friendly person, people are going to be friendly back. So you just put that out there.
Yes, definitely. So what is some advice you would give someone who has never competed in a sales competition before?
So the biggest piece of advice would be to do your research and to practice. As I mentioned before, practicing is like the biggest thing. I remember when I would go to all these different competitions, even if other people in my team wanted to go out or go to bed or something like that, I would call Brad and I would say, Brad, I need to practice. I haven't gone through this yet. Can we please practice together? So we would meet up and I would practice there. And that would always like ease my nerves. And like I said, once you get through it a couple times, you feel a lot more confident with what you're doing. So if you've never done it before, or if you have done it plenty of times before, you should be practicing in front of other people, because it's never going to come out the same from your mind to your mouth.
Yep.
Unless you have practiced it doing that way.
Yeah.
And you don't realize what you do or the things that you're saying that probably shouldn't be said or shouldn't be done unless you get that feedback from someone else, because it's something that's natural to you to continually do, but it might look weird. So
I agree with that 100%.
Right? So you might be saying a lot, or so. There's plenty of things that I have done and not realized until somebody has pointed it out. So that's just one of the many pieces of advice I could give, would just be to practice, but also do your research, of course. Don't just go off of what's on the material. Look and do your own research. There's plenty of different resources, of course, on Google and everything else, and on the company's website. So go and look into different areas, because everybody has the same material, but everybody can do their own individual research to make them stand out.
I know one thing about myself is sometimes when I'm talking, I say like pause, just stop instead of saying and then think about what you're going to say.
Absolutely. Completely agree. That's one, and I just said it again, now that we brought it up, that's one of the things that are taught in just public speaking classes in general, is to pause and take a second for yourself. They call it like the verbal segregators, where you use as a verbal pause instead of thinking it in your head and then going. It sounds a lot more professional when you do it that way. And I realized after somebody had told me that I say so. Instead of putting a period, I'll just put so, and then I would continue my sentence. And I'm working to not do that as much, but it's just something that other people will notice and you don't notice yourself.
Okay, well, thank you for those little tips. Can you explain to us why you compete in sales competitions, or revolve around sales?
I have always been competitive, and I know a lot of people are not that way, but in high school I did color guard in high school, which is the flags and the rifles and sabers and dance and all of that. So it was more from like an athletic perspective or a performing art perspective. And when I went to college, I wasn't involved in that anymore, but I still had a need for something. And I learned about the Sales Leadership Center. I wasn't interested in sales as I perceived it at the time. But I did want to get better at sales from a general perspective of you're always selling yourself, So I want to get better at that. And whatever it is that I want to do for a job, it's good to have some type of sales education, no matter what it is that you do. And I joined the Sales Leadership Center because of that. And I learned about their competitions. And the reason why I stuck with it and I continued with the competition side of it is because you learn so much from that. And it really helps from a real life perspective as well. And again, this is regardless of whether you're going into a sales role or if you're going into an accounting role or something completely different. Mm-hmm. It's just the ability to communicate with other people in an interpersonal way, one-on-one or in a group environment, and to have it in a way that allows you to have mistakes, but there's not really any consequences with these competitions. You're going in basically to just better your skills, and I loved that about it because you're able to showcase yourself, but also if you make a mistake or if something doesn't go your way, it's not that big of a deal. If anything, it's commendable because you're showing up and you're doing this thing that is probably way outside of your comfort zone.
Yep.
But you're doing it anyways, and so the people that are judging actually recognize that, and they are going to recognize you now throughout more events that you show up to. And I loved that about sales competitions, is that it allowed you to showcase your skills but in a safer environment than if you were to go into the real world. And it's really great skills to learn. Public speaking, communication, selling in general are all super, super valuable.
Yes, definitely. And to just help you bring up your confidence as well. I think for me, since joining, that's what definitely has helped me the most, is building up my self-confidence. I was kind of shy, reserved before, but now since joining and being an active member, I kind of opened out of my shell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too, is a lot of people would say to me, well, okay, you're just a super outgoing person, you're an extrovert, all of these other things. And that's not always the case. Like, you're seeing the SLC Rachel, which had done it for so often, and this was me after an accumulation of years in the SLC. But like, if I go into a completely new environment, in the beginning of college, if I went into a completely new environment, I was that person that was just kind of to myself. I didn't really want to talk to other people because I felt awkward. But when I went into the SLC, it was almost kind of, in a positive way, forced upon me, where you have to interact with people either through an icebreaker or through a networking event or something like that. And like you said, it helps you get out of your shell.
Yeah.
So
pushes you. Yeah.
Exactly. It pushes you. And I know that I am a little bit more extroverted as a person, but I know a ton of other people in the SLC or former SLC members that are not extroverted, but they do so well because of the different workshops and competitions and just skills that you learn from the Sales Leadership Center.
All right. So what are some resources that you use to help you within these sales competitions? I know that you mentioned Brad to help you with that. So are there any other resources that you have used?
Yes. And when I prepare for competitions, of course, Brad and Kayla are both great resources, and I know that there are plenty of other people, other students that have gone to them. But you should really leverage your teammates in any situation. When it comes to the CSUF local competitions, you're always going to be in a team, so you will always have someone to help you and help in general. So that's super important that you're leveraging them, because you're not going to have every single skill set, and you guys are both going to have different perspectives. And when I did my very first sales competition, it was the Titan sales competition that happens in the fall. I literally did not know anybody in the SLC. I got picked up by this group, thankfully, that were like, hey, we got an extra spot. And I was like, thanks, I have no friends. And I remember that there was one guy in the group that was, I think, a finance or economics major, and he was very numbers oriented. I'm not. I love public speaking and I love marketing and all of that stuff, but when it comes to numbers, I just don't like it.
Same.
And he would help put together the graphs and all the reporting mechanisms. And then when it came to the wording and the the speech component, that was what I really helped with. And so we were able to put those two things together to really make it stand out. And we had another person that was good at visuals, so he helped with putting the visuals together. And that's super important, just to understand what everyone's strength is and to play on each other's strengths, which is super cliche, but it's very true.
Yeah, it is. It makes sense too.
Exactly, right? And so it was just leveraging, of course, Brad and Kayla. If that's not something you're comfortable with, just because it's faculty, and I know some people are not always comfortable going into faculty, and as opposed to going to their peers, it's a little bit easier, then definitely leverage your team. You should be doing that anyways. And then, of course, you should be looking at the company's website just to see what the company is about and the materials that are given. And then you can just Google the rest of it if you really wanted to go in depth. But those 4 things, so like Brad and Kayla, your team, the website, and then the materials given, are a really great starting point.
Awesome. Thank you. Like, my favorite thing to do is when I'm researching a company, I always look up like what they're saying, or like, how it's like Kellogg's, they're great, or just
their slogan.
The slogans, exactly. I always like to look up those and try to like incorporate them into like, just so they know that, hey, I was on your website.
Yeah. And it's good too, like if you're able to throw things that are even a little bit more in depth in their website, like you had to actually do some research and click on a couple different things, then that's impressive, because they're like, okay, this person actually did their research. They didn't just like look at the picture or something.
All right, let's see. So what has been your favorite competition within the SLC? And just explain your experience and how it was.
So my favorite competition has always been the Titan Sales competition. And the reason why, well, let me explain what that is for anybody that doesn't know that competition. So it happens in the fall semester, at the very end of the semester. And I like to say it's like a culmination of everything that you learned for that entire semester. Whether you've been in the SLC for a couple years or a couple weeks, it's something that everybody can compete in. And the reason why I love this competition is because you do 2 different sales pitches or sales scenarios, where the first one is in the morning and you prepare it for one company, and then the second one is in the afternoon, you prepare it for a different company. So I like that in the sense that you get 2 opportunities to impress the judges, and you get 2 opportunities to really sharpen your skill set. I like it also because it's individual/team. My personality, I like doing things by myself, which is, take it as it is. But I do like going into the competitions and having the support of my team and being able to brainstorm with them and everything like that. And then being able to take what we've prepared and put your own individual twist on it if you'd like, and then go in and do that in front of the judges and the person that you're selling to. So I do like that it's team-oriented, but then it's also individual-based. And it is our largest competition of the year, really. That's the one that most people compete in. And there's usually the biggest rewards that you can get from it, too. So I think just the whole idea behind it and just the talk about it and how excited everybody else gets, I think that fuels into it. I just really enjoy the camaraderie, and then when we have the awards afterwards, and how many sponsor companies show up too, that's always super cool, and it's a great opportunity again to network and put yourself out there.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that for sure about the Titan sales competition. I grew so much from that experience, so I was like, you know what, this is good for me, so I think I should stick with it.
Exactly. Yeah, and like I said, that was my very first competition as well. So that was my first exposure to competitions, and there's a lot of trainings that go behind it. So anybody that feels nervous about doing something that they've probably never done before, don't worry about it, because there's tons of trainings that go behind it. And I also like that part, that you could start day one, get the materials and be overwhelmed, and then you start to chip away at it a little by little, and by the very last competition you're probably still going to have a million questions, because you probably just looked at the materials like the week before. But it's great because you get all of this different training to back it up. And then once the day happens, you're like, okay, like I've done all I can. I've learned, I've prepared. Let's just go for it.
I remember one time you kind of compared the sales competitions kind of like acting. You're having to memorize all these, I guess, quote unquote lines, and you go in there and you do your thing.
Right. I mean, you really are acting as if you are that salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, when you do it in real life, you're not really going to be acting because it's your job.
Yeah.
But in these sales competitions, if people are interested in the performance aspect, you are performing. If you want to think of it that way, then you're going in and you're acting, and you're really pretending to be a sales rep for a company. And you, of course, have to do your research, just like an actor has to do their research to make themselves believable. And then it all comes together, and it's the day of, and you're on set, and you have to deliver.
Yeah, I really loved that comparison. I was like, that's so true.
Right?
Okay. Even though the competitions are going to be held virtually this semester, just because of what is going on in the world, how would you encourage people to still participate, and why?
That's a great question, because it's something that we are just now experiencing, and it's completely new, but it's still super valuable. Connections are super valuable in life. And you always hear that cliche saying that's like, it's not what you know, it's who you know and how well they know you. But it's very true, from a sense that if you know or make a connection with somebody and nothing comes of it beforehand, but then later on down the line, like I was saying with my internships, I was ready to get a new one, then you can go back on those connections that you made. And these competitions are one way that you can get yourself out there. You can showcase your skills. And again, it's going to be in a safer environment, because it's something where you're not going to get fired if you don't do well, right?
Yeah.
And if you do well, then you're probably going to get scholarship money or some type of award because of it. So there's really no bad way to go into these competitions. And the amount of preparation is still there. The performance aspect of it is still there. The exposure is still there. You're just not in the same room with that person. So of course there's a little bit of a human disconnect there, but it's no different than how a lot of people work. I'm working in sales remotely right now. So these competitions would greatly help what I'm doing right now, because I have these calls like you and I are having all the time. And instead of actually going into the doctor's offices, which I normally would, I can't do that anymore. And I have them online like this. So being able to still go to that competition and prepare the same way that you would for anything else is super important. And it's going to be a skill set that you can take with you. You can put it on your resume. So if you're looking for something to really boost up your resume, this is definitely going to help. Like I said, sales is incorporated into everything. So even if you're going into a role that you don't think sales would really be relatable, it's one of those transferable skills. You need the communication aspect, you need the preparation, 100%. And it shows the dedication to it. So I would just strongly encourage anybody to do it still, even if they're like, well, it's not in person, what's the point? Well, the point is all of those things that I mentioned before, and you never know what you're able to do, what you're capable of, until you put yourself out there. It's going to be uncomfortable, but the more you do it, the better you're going to get, and the more networking opportunities and exposure you're going to have to all of these different people. And if I can just add real quick, the one thing I will say about the SLC and my being involved in these competitions particularly is that I've gotten so many opportunities that I would have probably never gotten if I just, was an inactive participant, because my face was out there all the time. People saw me. They basically knew who I was or who I am. And that was something that really resonated with people. And so I got a ton, not to sound boastful, but I got a ton of job offers or internship offers because of that, because of going to these competitions. Mm-hmm. And even when COVID did hit and the market, kind of crashed for a little bit in regards to employment, I didn't have to worry about that. It's because of the involvement that I had, because maybe some companies were no longer able to offer me what they were planning on, but other companies were. So I still had the opportunity to basically be choosy with what I wanted to do.
Wouldn't that be great if everyone could do that?
Participate, guys. Like, come to these competitions. If you are an introvert, or you think you're an awkward person and you don't think you have those skills, this will pull the skills out of you, because it really forces you to go in front of people and to really practice what it is that you should be learning on a daily basis.
Yeah, turning those weaknesses into strengths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it's not a strength of yours, it might be a strength of your friends that you can lean on. So
there you go. Well said. Thank you. This has been great so far. Oh my gosh.
Something that I think is just super great about the SLC in general, and I apologize for my landline in the background.
She's already getting sales calls.
I think they're all just spam calls. But something that the SLC really has done for me is it's created a community for me. And that was the thing that I really threw myself into in college. I was involved in a ton of things, but I really threw myself into the SLC because of what I was able to gain from the experience. And the great thing about the SLC is that, and you'll hear it all the time, but it's not a club, it's a center. It's a resource for students that is completely free. You don't have to pay anything, and you get so many benefits from it. I can tell people, honestly, that if I was not involved in the SLC in college, I don't know where I would be. I'm not entirely sure kind of where I would be at in life. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I just wouldn't have the opportunities that I had and that were afforded to me. And I've gotten so many scholarships. I've gotten, like I said, so many different connections. I was able to pay for a bunch of my college through the scholarships that the SLC provides. And I was able to make a bunch of friends through the SLC and have those relationships that I wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to have. So the SLC is it's a community for people to go to and to learn and to feel comfortable doing the things that are uncomfortable. So if anybody is hesitant about it, at least attend some of the workshops. Put a little bit of effort into it, because you will start to see the improvements, and it probably will want to make you do more and to put more into it. So the effort you put in is probably going to be the effort that you get out. It's going to be an awesome opportunity. So I highly encourage anyone to go.
And you were the first person that I saw do a presentation for the SLC. And I remember you were listing of all these benefits, and I was looking around the room and I was realizing like no one else had the same reaction as me. So I was so surprised. I was, why is anyone going out and, participating and being active within the SLC? I was like, there's so many great things that the SLC wants to give to students, but, you can't really force the students into it. But I think you have to make the time for sure.
And that's the thing that's going to make you successful versus other people is looking at something, seeing the opportunity, and taking initiative with it. And that's why there are so many different opportunities for people like yourself and people that join the SLC, because you're the one that's actually being proactive about it. Whereas there's a room full of people, you can literally say, hey, here's free money, but all you have to do is come to an hour workshop for it. And they're like, an hour for $1,000? No, thank you. But yeah, it just, there's a disconnect there, right? Yeah. And that's all you have to give is your time, and what's going to come out of it is so much, so many different things, so many different benefits. So that if you can dedicate a little bit of your time, I promise that you're going to get a lot from it.
If you're on the fence about joining the SLC, just do it, as Nike would say.
Exactly.
I think those are all of our questions for today. Thank you so much, Rachel, for being with us today and sharing your experience about the Great Northwoods Sales Warm-Up. I got SLC on my mind. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for being with us.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I'm glad I could talk to you and catch up a little bit too.
Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you on our next podcast.